Next up, we have Lloyd Dickman, formerly from QLogic and now a man of leisure, at least for the moment. Lloyd was a key speaker at our last conference. He spoke about exascale and some other things. I think Lloyd is a great guy personally. He's one of the great thinkers in the industry, in my opinion. He's going to give us an update on the Technology Advisory Group and give us all a chance to hear what's new with him and his thinking in this area. So welcome, Lloyd.
Thank you. Yeah, hi. Thanks very much, and certainly a pleasure to be here in Monterey this morning. So, as Jim mentioned a year ago, the thought was to provide a way for the Open Fabrics Alliance to get better technical input in terms of where we should be moving in the future. So we formed a technical advisory group. In fact, I'm speaking for the group, but as it turns out, a number of members of the group, probably about half the group, are actually in the room today. So, in addition to my remarks during breaks, lunches, etc., please feel free to talk, with myself or any of the other members of the team. In addition to our conversations, we did spend some time trying to get external input. In fact, we had a number of interviews. We wanted to get some input from the high-performance computing community, even though, in our group we did have representation from some of the very large DOE labs as well as the various vendors. But we did go out specifically, to have conversations with TAC, with Bob and his team at NASA Ames, and also wanted to get some input from the commercial side of things as well. So we reached out to folks at the New York Stock Exchange and also at Oracle. Our conversations were not intended to be particularly InfiniBand-centric, since Open Fabrics does support multiple underlying transports. But just as a little bit of background, InfiniBand is very widely used in the community, and in fact, the majority of comments we got back tended to be more InfiniBand focused than necessarily any of the Ethernet transports. In talking with folks, we had a list of questions more in terms of where the technology, Open Fabric should be moving in the future. One thing that was not on our list was how Open Fabrics is currently packaged and distributed. Yet we found it very interesting that in each of the interviews we had, this was the #1 issue everybody universally raised to us. So, even though it wasn't something that we were trying to specifically explore, I wanted to bring it to the attention of this group. There's certainly a view in the user community that OFED technology is distributed via many different methods. Depending on the user, some folks get it through their usual Linux distributions, some get it from integration vendors, some get it from the InfiniBand technology vendors, and a number of users also put together site-specific stacks, drawing on the technology either directly from Open Fabrics or from other sources. In addition, the Linux distribution vendors have their own methodologies for getting the OFED technology. So even though this has been a topic that has come up before, and I know the EWG has spent time looking at various approaches, we certainly did see a strong groundswell of request for looking looking at alternatives beyond what's currently done. A message we got was that the community would prefer distribution via, perhaps a more conventional RPM mechanism, and also to make sure that as capabilities were added, it did not necessarily disrupt other capabilities, since the current distribution has a lot of interdependencies in terms of the technologies. There was also a thought that OFED components perhaps should also, to the extent possible, be offered on a more a la carte basis. That is, there might be some folks who, for various reasons, want to keep, the underlying ULPs unchanged, but maybe want to use, a new version of some of the management tools or OpenSM, etc. So, would there be ways in which they could add specific new technologies without necessarily having an entire refresh of everything in OFED? The third bullet is also a support of additional distributions. This was primarily from the financial community, where a lot of InfiniBand is used, a lot of OpenFabrics is used in the real-time financial trading. They tend to use the real-time Linux kernels and would certainly like to see those directly supported. Fourthly, a lot of folks are also looking to have all of the OFED changes, pushed upstream into the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel is the source for a lot of folks to ultimately pull from, and anything we as a community could do there would be greatly appreciated. And then lastly, there was the general problem, in the OFED release cycles, everything, is tested. There are the interoperability programs, and all that is viewed very, very positively. However, at various times, vendors introduce new drivers, new firmware updates that are not necessarily on the same cadence as the OFED releases. And, there was certainly a call for a process such that all of that could be somehow certified or validated in some sense, such that users would feel comfortable that that all of these changes would work properly. Okay. The second major thing we wanted to point out, and this was certainly something we heard from NASA, and in Bob's talk he reiterated this as well, and I think Steve also touched on this. As a community, we should be doing a much better job of disseminating information, and the thought that was raised and also on the technical advisory group thought it was very reasonable, was to develop some kind of a knowledge base for the community. There's certainly technologies, wikis are widely used, other technologies are also used, but right now the mechanism is basically the email reflectors and archives seem to be where there is a lot of knowledge, but searching that knowledge in an organized way is sometimes very difficult. And also there's other knowledge that is out there in the community, but perhaps isn't even reflected in the email archives. So to the extent that we can raise the knowledge level of everyone in the community, make all of that knowledge widely used, feeling was it would certainly help current users and also encourage more and more users to adopt OpenFabrics. Another point that was mentioned, and this came more from the commercial side, although there's certainly I think some movement that was alluded to earlier this morning, even on the high performance computing side, is to enhance the numbers of APIs or upper layer protocols in order to have wider adoption of OpenFabrics. Part of this is relates to middleware and communication libraries, but also part of this also relates to how end users can develop applications. As a community, we're certainly doing work in terms of education, of writing end user applications, trying to disseminate the knowledge in terms of using the Open Fabrics verbs interface. But the thought is that there are a lot of other very widely used APIs out there. Some that were specifically mentioned, and this came more from the commercial side, memcached kinds of interfaces, messaging interfaces that are becoming open sourced as a way of expanding the reach of Open Fabrics beyond just the high performance computing community or those folks that are currently developing some specific applications. The last bullet on this slide also relates to the notion of sockets. The sockets interface perhaps is the most widely used API. Likely 99.99% of all applications out there adhere to it. As a community, we do provide IP over IB, which would support that, and also SDP, which would support that. However, there was a feeling that perhaps higher performance socket interfaces is something that we as a community could be providing. It would certainly leverage a lot of the RDMA capabilities that we have, and again make Open Fabrics much more interesting to the very, very large number of existing applications that are out there. And I know at past workshops we've had some presentations on asynchronous sockets and other technologies, but I think the general feeling was coming up with a very, very high performance, very lean implementation of sockets could go a long way to increasing the reach of Open Fabrics. Next area to cover is resiliency, and a number of the previous speakers spoke about this. As systems become larger, resiliency, in the face of failure, becomes much more important. There are some existing mechanisms. We have, the APM mechanism. As a group, in fact, we weren't quite sure whether, in fact, all of the current upper layer protocols or even the current connection management software fully supported this. But even going beyond this, as we go to larger and larger fabrics, making sure that all of the tools we have are fully resilient is going to be important. There was also a view that providing feedback to the applications, not just doing this in a transparent way, but anticipating some of the coming changes in high-performance computing, MPI3 coming along with its callback mechanisms, to have ways for us in Open Fabrics to report back to the applications and communication libraries the fact that errors had occurred. Some things, of course, we can handle transparently, but other things would probably be best reflected back to the application and handled at the application layer. Although most of the things we were looking at were not specific to the underlying fabrics, one area that came up was really issues related to support of very, very large fabrics. And there were two views here. One, at the upper left, the need to support very large subnets. Certainly coming from the high end of the high-performance computing community, there was a view that InfiniBand needs to extend in terms of supporting much larger addressability to be able to handle very large number of endpoints. And I know in the InfiniBand Trade Association there is some work going on in and looking at a number of alternatives for that. But certainly, as we saw this morning, some numbers, not necessarily in terms of exascale, but even the next one or two steps, the number of endpoints, is certainly going to be increasing, and Open Fabrics needs to be making appropriate changes to support that. Then in the upper right was another view of supporting multiple subnets. A single flat network, I think the consensus view was operationally very difficult to manage, and in fact there were lots of reasons to maintain the concept of separate subnets. It may be appropriate to route each subnet separately. You may have computational subnets, you may have file serving subnets, visualization subnets, etc. Making sure that we're adding in full subnet routing, the ability to support multiple subnets, was a very clear call, especially as systems start increasing in size or users start having multiple systems, each with its own management requirements. And on the lower left was the view that as we go to larger and larger fabrics, we may need to think through how some of our tools and techniques are handled. Whether we need to distribute, work on things in parallel. I think and Bob had a very good illustration of some work going on at NASA that was related to that. But the need to manage large fabrics in a very, very timely way was viewed as extremely important. And similarly, all of our tools need to do all of this in the environment where there's going to be frequent change. Because when you have tens of thousands of links, and nodes, something is going to be happening all of the time to it. This is a somewhat busy slide. I wanted to highlight really the first bullet up here, which it was a view of broadening Open Fabric acceptance, was the fact that many users are moving toward various management frameworks, some open source frameworks or frameworks offered by various companies. The easier we make it to have Open Fabrics integrate into these frameworks, then the easier it would be for users to manage large systems. And certainly a lot of these frameworks are gaining a great deal of traction outside of the Open Fabrics community. So being able to tie those together is something that we think needs to be addressed. The other points on the screen actually came out of conversation with NASA, and I think Bob highlighted some of these concerns as well in his talk. But in very large fabrics, the need to be able to do rapid fabric configuration, handle VL15 congestion issues, and another related issue, be aware of the topology of the network in terms of what nodes get assigned to various applications will become increasingly important. That is, a lot of these environments may not be necessarily uniform, where we don't have to consider the topology. Issue of tools, of course, with size, with operational ease becomes important. Larger size means, the need for easier to use tools, and certainly visualization was a topic that seemed to to go a long way to address that. But also, as we go to larger fabrics, the issues of congestion become more important. There are, at least in InfiniBand, some underlying architectural mechanisms. However, configuring those, and more importantly, even monitoring the congestion in the fabric, is something that I think we can help in terms of the tools that we provide. And then also there was mentioned earlier tools to validate cluster correctness. In the very large clusters, things will break. and we want to make sure that the clusters are continually correct. Last year at the Open Fabric workshops, there were some presentations on virtualization. This is a topic, though, that at least from the commercial users we spoke to, seemed to be very important. And what they would like to see is Open Fabric extend itself to be able to support single root I/O virtualization technologies, and also what they would like to see are the virtual environments included in our list of supported operating environments. So the Zens, the VMwares, etc., would be very, very desirable for commercial users to have these listed. Now, the third major thing wanted to leave you with, as we've listed a number of items here. Other speakers today have certainly also listed a number of items, and I think there's a great deal of consistency in the messages. The real underlying question then is, how do we make all of this happen? We as an Open Fabrics community are, currently volunteer-driven. Vendors, users contribute various technologies as appropriate, and that's very, very good, and certainly a great deal of good has come out of that. However, a number of the things that we're talking about may require some heavy lifting. Whether it's address extensions, other major enhancements to the tool sets, resiliency, etc. So there are limits to how much each individual member of the community can contribute. So I think a question and sort of end on this note for the community as a whole, perhaps there can be some conversations around this, is how do we enable the heavy lifting that needs to be done in order to continue to evolve Open Fabrics. And at the end of the day, that comes down probably to money. So should the Open Fabrics community as itself look to invest funds? I know this is a model that's being used elsewhere in the industry, or potentially should the Open Fabrics community seek outside funding from user groups or other constituents who would benefit from some of these changes. So and we're raising this issue because even though I think there is some clarity forming around the various areas that need to be looked at, we really now need to be moving the conversation to how in fact do we go about implementing all of this, and what needs to happen in order to support that. So I want to thank you for your time. Again, myself, other members of the team are available, and I guess we have time for a few questions. So, yeah, Steve?
Finally, no matter questions. Slide 5, you talk about taking things upstream. My question is, what currently stands in the way? Second of all, I don't think that OFA has the amount of money to do much of any what I would consider really pushing technology, because I know that I've spent over the past several years several $1 million to move some of the technology forward. And if you've got that much money left over, I want 2 T-shirts next year. And what level of funding do you think you need to solve these problems? Like if I were to give you 2 summer students for 2 years in a row, what would you do with them?
Okay, so let's see. In terms of Steve's first question, are there folks from EWG who can address the upstream issue?
Sorry, I missed the question. What was the question?
Oh, so what's standing in the way of moving various changes upstream to the kernel?
Kernel acceptance.
There's nothing in the way. I think the bottleneck there tends to be...
That means there is something in the way if there's a bottleneck.
Yeah, so the bottleneck tends to be probably, we'll only have so many cycles to review and integrate and test apps. I mean, you know, that's one of the bottlenecks.
So that's a person problem.
That's a person problem, but I mean, I think it's in general, it's just the way that the kernel.org works, right? I mean,
It's a very persnickety.
it's a slower process, but they want to make sure things are right before they put it up.
That's just a person problem, right? So if he had someone funded who could be trained
To help do patches.
I mean, we funded PNFS, and we understand what it's like to do that.
Yes, if he had more help, if he had an Andrew, what's his name, type of person to help review and make sure that the patches are correct, he would probably, could maybe, you know, but they didn't have to be the, you know, the kernel, that person. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest bottleneck, wouldn't you say? And, you know, I mean, there's a couple things that aren't upstream but are never going upstream, like SRP, and that's just because of SVP because of a weird legal anomaly. But other than that, the rest of the stuff in general is pretty much just you know, yeah, it could help us. Because he's the only one that. Yeah.
Right, so we can take this offline, but my question is, if it's just a people problem and the funding, it's not a technology issue. The problems that should be able to be solved, this will make that should be solved.
I think there are two things. First is a human resource problem on some kind of work like what I thought, upstream and things like that. And in the broader scale, I think we need more involvement of architecture and disposition of where we want to go. Right? How do we do, you know, socket breaking performance? I don't think anyone here takes the lead.
So that's why I think what Lloyd brought up, and one of the things we've been complaining about, is one of his two of us have been complaining about. Okay, we have a repository of information where there's a list of things that need to be done. We can then go down and refine the list and say, this is what I think this will cost. Give me an rough order of magnitude. We can start picking off the things that have been prioritized and solve them, because there is funding to fix some of these problems. As you well know, money can be had to solve these problems if we can show that the impact will be useful for the community. We won't fund, well, we will fund one outside fund rough, but we normally would prefer to fund mechanisms and solutions that are better for the community in the long term.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd like to add to that. I think that also allows us to, for people that have common problems, to pitch in, right? And so not to fund the whole thing, right? And so that's, if you can consolidate funding from multiple sources on the problems that people are having, that could be to if they're voluntarily committing to a particular problem.
That kind of raises the issue whether open fabric should be involved in having the human resources, if just the people person is in a position to fund that job directly rather than volunteers.
Fair. So, you know, what I wanted to do was open up this question, and, you know, from the show of hands, you know, it looked like there was a lot of interest. So before Jim gives me the hook, you know, just wanted to, you know, encourage everyone, you know, over the next 2.5 days to, you know, try to spend some time thinking through this issue and, you know, hopefully coming to, you know, some resolution in terms of how to move forward.
Well, I hate to be whiz on the flame here, but the problem is, for the 2.5 days, we fine. But we've got to be able to continue to move this process forward so that the methodology and the existence and the location to carry this on past Wednesday afternoon at 4 is imperative. Otherwise, we'll be trying to remember who the hell to send email to, and that's not the answer. The answer is a place where we can start bouncing the wiki, start bouncing email things to, and start getting this moving or does it just drop dead on its own?
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, Steve is right. We talk about this at every conference, and OFED continues to ship something that's ABI incompatible with the upstream kernel, and it makes us all look bad, right? This has been going for 3 years, and we can't even get that one little thing fixed.
Okay, thank you.